Hi everyone. I just want to say a huge thank you to you all for supporting this podcast. Times are tough and my health isn't the best, so I'd really appreciate it if you could help donate to my Buy Me a Coffee or even just £1 to my PayPal link. Your support is much appreciated to help raise awareness on this very important podcast. Thank you and bring the noise.
Bring me a fever and bring the noise!
Hello and welcome to the Bring the Noise podcast. Today I've got a woman, Pamela Thomas, with us today, and I'll tell people how I came across Pamela's story. Recently I've seen her give a statement in the Scottish COVID inquiry, and when I seen her giving that evidence, it made me question a hell of a lot of things, especially what we were led to believe in the last 2.5 years of what happened during the pandemic. Now, when I seen you giving evidence for your brother, who was James, isn't it? You were giving evidence for what happened to your brother in regards to how he passed away. So when I seen the evidence you were giving, it didn't add up to what we were all being led to believe. And I then reached out to someone who said they knew you and then asked yourself to come on, and I call this the Bring the Noise podcast because I don't want anyone to suffer in silence. Me personally, I don't think what the time that you got at the inquiry, I personally think you've got a lot more to say.
Absolutely.
And I think this is the reason why I wanted to bring you on, because what might happen to your brother, it might happen to a hell of a lot more people. And a lot more people might actually get more answers. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Pamela, we'll just go into it. Just a brief outline, who you are, background, and we'll just get into it regarding your brother.
Okay, so I'm Pamela Thomas. I'm here today obviously for a voice for my brother James Cameron. He was 41 when he passed away in Nine Wells Hospital, Dundee. I'm a full-time carer to my wee daughter. She's severely autistic, so that's kind of my background.
So let's, because the thing is, what we're going to get is, like I said to you, we're going to get challenged. You know, people challenge me because of what's happened to me. Obviously, I'm vaccine injured. And people challenge me, well, you know, what's your credentials, John? How do you know this? But yeah, I can speak to doctors and speak to people that are going through it, and they can say, you've told me a hell of a lot more than what a doctor has. Now, in my opinion, you don't need to be a doctor at this point in time to understand facts and data. And my understanding is you've obviously taken your brother's notes and medical records as well. So let's speak a bit about your brother. Who was your brother? What age was he in that?
James, my big brother, he was 41 when he went into hospital. He was a chef. He done kind of catering for himself. Moved up and down from England to Scotland and that throughout his life. Been here for a wee while. Got 2 wee boys. So he was my best pal. He was an absolute diamond of a guy. He was, like I said at the inquiry, no just to me, to his sons, to my dad, to my sons. You know, he was our best pal. He did anything, and he had a heart of gold, absolute gold.
So obviously you're very close with your brother.
Aye, we lost our mum when we were just wee. So there was me, James, and my younger brother Stuart. And we kind of got separated after our mum died. My wee brother, he stayed with my grandparents. Me and James then went to live with my dad. So we were very, very close. Very close. You know, we grew up with this. We had a special bond. We grew up without a mum. Do you know what I mean? So.
Did you take the mum role?
Absolutely.
Aye.
Absolutely.
Just fit right into that role, no bother.
Absolutely, yes.
So obviously you said he's got 2 kids.
Aye.
How old are his kids?
So his kids were 10 and 17 at the time he died.
So let's go into 2020. I like to ask a lot of people this question just to get. I like to ask them what they seen in 2020. Did you see a pandemic?
So what I seen was absolute terror on the telly. You know, things that were happening in Italy, China. I remember turning up one day at a speech and language appointment with my wee girl, and there was hand sanitizer and that, and people were walking in without sanitising their hands, and I was arguing with them, you know, sanitise your hands, what's going on? You know, took my kids right out of school. There's this big virus out here. Got my husband, the mask and that, he was the only person that left the house. First to pull my kids out of school before the schools even shut down. There's like this big virus going on. People are dropping dead. What's going on? What's going on? One of my sons was in prison at the time, so I was absolutely terrified. I had plans in my head that I was going to find out where his room was, get bulldozers. If I was having visions of security, prison officers and that dropping down dead and prisoners left in cells. I was absolutely terrified.
So you kind of, I don't want to say fall for it, because nobody fell for it. Do you know what I mean? It was, you can't fall for it when it's in your face and it's.
That's all you said.
Exactly.
Was
Nothing but fear and propaganda, in my honest opinion.
And it worked for a wee while.
Yeah.
For a wee while. And then as time kind of went on, I was doing a lot of research. I'm on the spectrum myself, so I have a need for detail.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started.
What do you mean on the spectrum?
I'm autistic.
Okay.
So I looked at things, researched things, watched videos for all over the place. Was watching and seeing things being shut down, which kind of alerted me to be more interested in why are these people being shut down.
See, with being autistic, does that mean you're kind of more focused into things? Does that make sense? So you like
can't let go of it.
So you kind of zone in on things more than the average person. Would that be right?
Aye.
So because you might get people who say, "No, I mean, she's autistic. What does she know?" But if I'm being honest with you, autistic people tend to be doctors and all that. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So the way it impacts on me, kind of the kind of term that people maybe use for me is like a dog with a bone. That's the word that's being used. You know, I cannot let go of something. You know, it's black and white, right or wrong. You know, true or false, and that's it. And you can pick up vibes, shall we say, off of people and situations.
So when did you start to twig and say, nah, this doesn't make sense?
Well, when I started seeing things online, not the television, it was online.
Online where? Because I never seen anything online. Was it Facebook?
So there was things on Facebook, there was things on channels that I'd ended up on, like the Telegram, Parler, all these kind of wee apps and that I ended up downloading and reading.
Getting two sides of the story.
Aye.
Mm-hmm.
Aye. And then it was happening because people were getting shut down. They were advising you to open up these channels and access these other means of communication. And that's what I done. Because why would people shut things down? I couldn't understand that. Mm-hmm. So that made me start to question things. And then I was seeing people on the telly and that with their masks, and then they would go into the rooms, and the next minute they'd all be taking their masks off and that. And then, you know, the rules and that they had, I started to question. And, you know, like, wait a minute, you can sit down and have a drink, but you can't stand up. And all became a bit silly, you know, and it was like, wait a minute, they're making a fool of us. I was like, and then I started to think, wait a minute, is this even real?
So when did you start to kind of twig and say, nah, something not right here? Would that mid 2020 or?
Probably aye.
And then did you start saying, taking the mask off? Did you kind of say sack the?
I didn't wear a mask, to be honest with you. My husband did. He was the one that went to the shops. I never seen any of the queues. I never seen any of that 2 metre stuff and that. 'Cause I didn't leave the house. I was in with the wens.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to, you know, just kind of question things and think. And I thought to myself, you know, what they're doing here is they're making a fool of us. They're making a fool of us. And like I say, I was accessing that through other channels, no my mainstream media on the news or whatever. And what I was seeing is a lot of people were saying the same kind of things, and they were saying, we're getting shut down. And that made me more interested as to why.
Do you trust mainstream media now?
Absolutely not.
I think mainstream media is dead. I think anyone
Absolutely.
that's watching it now,
Absolutely
I
not.
think he's all brainwashed at this point in time.
I'm not brainwashed. I don't watch it.
Aye, I mean, I don't want to say everybody's brainwashed, but I think if he's following a one-sided narrative, and I said that to Matt Letizia on it. I said, it was be locked in the house, don't question, and if you do question it, it's not going to get out, you know?
Yeah.
And, it's just, when I look back now, it just didn't make sense, you know what I mean? Like, you can't pick your pint or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? It was ridiculous.
You couldn't buy a coat for your children, but you could... it just seemed, it was absolutely, you couldn't even, it's crazy. People, we have a deadly pandemic, right? Everybody's going to die, right? And we cleared the shelves of toilet paper. We're going to die, but we all run out and buy toilet paper.
I think there's more to that, by the way. It doesn't make sense. Why toilet paper? Why was toilet paper? Aye, but... So, obviously, you've started to see cracks in the system, I suppose.
Yes.
So in regards to your brother, what happened? What actually happened to your brother for him to be in the position that he was in?
Well, that's a question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, my wee girl, she's so that's another thing. She was at school, she's teachers with maths and that. I had to delay her entry into primary 1 and stuff. Couldn't pick any special schools for her. I had to just keep her at a wee local school because of all the kind of restrictions that were in place. But she's a wee 1-to-1 teacher, and I got contacted for Track and Trace to tell me that my wee girl had been in contact with somebody that tested positive. School very kindly told me who that person was. They phoned me, and so it was a case of we had to then, isolate. But because my wee girl couldn't talk or anything like that, because she's quite delayed, she still had a bottle. She took a bottle at the time, and it was a bottle. She only drank orange juice, diluting orange juice. But she was taking a drink of the bottle, and she was looking at it as if to say, "What's that?" And then she was refusing it. So a few days into it, and then I ended up not well myself, and just sleeping all the time, exhausted. I never
Fatigue.
Never ever sleep through the day. If I was to sleep through the day, I would, I would be up all night. So all I was doing was sleeping, and then I can remember waking up to eat and going back to sleep and stuff. Then I lost my taste and smell, and then the penny dropped with my wee girl not being able to speak. That's obviously why she was refusing her bottle of juice and stuff like that, because she obviously couldn't taste it, and it must have happened to her and all. So then we were about 5 days into it, and then my husband ended up with it, my brother ended up with it.
How did we all amongst each other, like we all mingling with each other? And
prior to, obviously,
before you knew, was it a family thing or something?
Well, it was my brother who was in and out of my house all the time, do you know what I mean? And my other children, my wee grandson was only 6 weeks old. He had it as well. So I think there was 11 of us in total, which was strange because, I went for believing in it to no believing in it, then to 11 of us having it.
Yeah.
So there was something, we had it, something like I've never had before. The symptoms I had were, vertigo. It was strange. My hair was falling out and stuff.
Feel like you were on a boat.
It was just felt like, I don't know. It was just weird. It was nothing that I've ever experienced before. Vertigo, exhaustion, sleep. But I was hungry and I was eating in between that. And my brother, he lived in St Andrews, so what I was doing was phoning him when I was waking up to check on him. Because as I started, obviously, 5 days into it, I think my husband then got it. So he was on a par with my brother kind of thing. And although I wasn't 100%, I was maybe about 70%, starting to feel a bit better.
How bad was it? Like, did you feel like you were at death's door, or did you just feel...
Oh, nothing like that. Just bed.
Nothing like what they said on the telly?
Oh, no, nothing like that. I didn't have a cough. I'm not sure if I had like shortness of breath or if it was maybe anxiety. I was imagining it. I certainly didn't. I didn't take anything other than paracetamol and ibuprofen.
Ibuprofen.
And antihistamines, I take them daily. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it
They
was,
would help.
yeah, so it was antihistamines, and like I said, eating and drinking my fluids and stuff like that. But I was phoning my brother in between waiting up, how are you, brother, and stuff like that. And my brother was complaining of diarrhea. He was in his bed and that as well, but he was just saying diarrhea, it's bad, pal, it's bad. So I went on to Amazon and says, right, okay, we'd been taking like the vitamin D3 and, you know, the stuff that they were telling you on the internet to take, that you should be taking to keep yourself, especially being locked in your houses and stuff like that. You get your D3 levels up, and there was some other things like zinc and magnesium, you know, your vitamins. So I was doing all that. Sent them out to my brother, and I was getting a message for the Amazon man saying, you know, try to deliver the parcel. So I'm on the phone to my brother, and I'm like phoning him, brother, they're at your door with the parcel. And he's like, I'm in the toilet. Couldn't get to the door. And so it happened again the following day.
But that's diarrhea kind of thing. Like.
Well, I think that was happening all the time through his course of his illness. But the following day, the Amazon man went back with the parcel and couldn't get it again, and he'd left it at the door. So by this time I was a bit worried, and I'd say to my son, look, you want to go through and check on Uncle James for me? Take him through some of this diorolite and stuff. It was about 12 o'clock at night. And that would have been Thursday the 16th of September. I says, take some of this through. So he went away through, my son drove away through, was in the shops, you know, I think it was late night, Tesco's or Asda, whatever, and bought the diorolites and all that kind of stuff to try and help him, because I was a bit concerned about the diarrhea and the you know, dehydration and stuff like that. He took it away through, and he tried to phone me, my son, but I was in my bed, you know, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd missed calls. And I'd missed the call. And the following day I'd phoned my brother again and try to check up on him, and it was becoming like he was coming a bit quiet on that. So I phoned my son again. I was like, look, can you go and check on Uncle James? He's like, Mum, because I've got bad anxiety, really bad anxiety. I was like, look, I'm not anxious, I need you to check on him, I can't get him, he's not answering the phone to me. And so he says, well, I'm going to phone his boys. Well, his oldest boy, lived in St Andrews. So he phoned him and says, look, son, will you go round and check on your dad? Mum's been on the phone to me and she's a bit worried about him. And so his son had went round to his door, and he'd seen the parcel, Amazon parcel with the vitamins outside the door. And that prompted him to enter the house. And I think my brother tried to get up when his son went into the house, and my brother kind of stumbled and kind of collapsed a wee bit or something. There was something that happened anyway, and it gave his son a fright. And he left and went to his mum, and he was, you know, pretty scared. And his mum phoned me up, and she says to me, Pamela, you need to do something. He's frightened. The bairn was the word that she used. I said, what do you mean? She says, well, you're his sister. I said, what do you mean I'm his sister? She says, well, I don't know if he needs an ambulance or that. You're his sister. He either needs Murray Royal, and I don't know if you know what Murray Royal is. That's a mental health hospital.
Right.
So the way my brother presented, obviously, to his son, he scared him. Mm-hmm. So she says he either needs Murray Royal or he needs an ambulance or something.
What year was this, by the way? Just
September 21. This was Thursday, the 16th of September 2021.
So this is September 2021.
Oh, this was actually the Friday, because this is when I could.
Just out of curiosity, do you know if your brother took that vaccine at all?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you think it's worth looking, investigating to see?
I've tried to, and there's been messages between us, and you know what one of the messages actually says to me is, I'll take it first, Pamela. I'll take it first. If we get forced to take it, I'll take it first, and if I die, then you know not to take it. I've got that in black and white. But on his records and all that, he was unvaccinated, and to my knowledge, he was absolutely 100% unvaccinated.
Okay. I was just curious to know, do you know what I mean? But, you know, it'd be good to try and get to the, you know, if he has had it, do you know what I mean? You can phone up.
It's went through my head, because you know how they've got this classification where if anything happens within the first so many days after vaccination, then you're classed as unvaxxed. So it did actually enter my head.
One of the reasons I say is because and not to talk about me, but I had severe diarrhea and vomiting after it for 6 weeks.
Did you?
I collapsed, seizures, believed I was genuinely dying, and that was November 19th, 2021, and sorry.
So funny you should say that. So my father-in-law, the reason we weren't unvaxxed is because my father-in-law also got vaccinated, and that was one of the symptoms that he had when he had a reaction to the vaccination, and the doctor came out and they injected him with penicillin. Me and my brother are both allergic to penicillin, so that was one of the reasons we weren't going to take a vaccination.
And did he recover, your father-in-law?
At the time, but sadly he passed away in January 22,
How did he pass away?
suddenly in his sleep.
Just died suddenly.
Aye.
And what was it? No cause of death unascertained.
Something to do with his heart. They never done a full post-mortem, but they done some kind of like scan post-mortem thing, and they says it was something to do with, they gave a name for it, but it was something to do with like his earlobes. They were able to tell by his earlobes, something to do with his earlobes. It was heart related anyway. But he never had any issues with his heart prior to that. I know that for a fact.
No underlying, no comorbidities, as they like to call it.
Absolutely not. He did not have any issues with his heart.
Do you know how long it was after that injection?
No, because he was obviously during lockdown.
How old was he? Your father-in-law?
John, I think, must have been. He was in his 60s. He was in his 60s.
It's not that old.
So what had happened was, because we were unvaccinated, he didn't want to go into the house. So my husband was getting window visits.
Yeah.
And leaving his Christmas presents and that at the door because he didn't want you going in the house to see him and that if you were unvaccinated or putting him at risk. He was a vulnerable man. So, I questioned. I didn't know anybody, not a single soul that died with COVID. Not a single soul.
Yeah.
And I was like, could my brother have took the vaccine and not told us? It was something that went through my head.
I know that a lot of people are struggling to actually get vaccination status, and by the way, I'm not talking about people that are trying to find answers for loved ones, but I'm talking about people that have taken it are trying to phone up now and say, can you give me my vaccination status? And they're saying, oh, we don't have your card, we don't have your details.
Right, okay.
That's what I've been hearing, and for some people have been trying to get because they're trying to find a batch number.
Yeah, I believe that there's some batch numbers that are a concern there.
Well, there's been a lot of data on it now, and it shows you how dangerous certain batch numbers. But so obviously, you've told me your brother's collapsed.
Yeah, so that was the Friday. It was Friday the 17th of September.
And was he not talking of it, or was he passed out?
I wasn't there, so I don't know. He just he gave the bairn a fright, was his mum's words. Immediately I went on.
How old was the wee one?
17.
17.
So I went immediately, phone until he picked up the phone. I says, James, are you alright? And he was like, aye. But he sounded a bit distant. Do you know what I mean?
No compass mentis.
Aye. It was strange, and he was making a noise like a and I was like, James, what are you making that noise for? And he was like, what noise? I says, you keep making a noise. But he wasn't aware that he was doing it.
This is really, see, when I want to go back to it, when I took that thing, I kept doing this. I kept talking, going,
Right.
Every time I spoke, I had this thing when I would talk and go,
Right, it was just
after every sentence, and it was like my brain was not functioning at all.
I've never heard this noise before ever again of anybody, but I can remember it. It was a noise he was making, and I says to him, "Are you all right?" I says, "You're frightened, bairn." He says, "Who?" I says, "Sam. You frightened Sam?" And he says, "I don't know, Pamela." I says, "Bro, are you all right?" I says, "I'm going to get wee James to come to you." So I phoned my son, and he'd had a doctor's appointment that day, and he was actually on his way back from Edinburgh, and I says to him, "Look, son, because I can't drive, and my husband's no well with COVID at this point as well. I'm in the house with my kids." And I says to my son, "Look, you need to go through and see Uncle James for me. This is what's happened." So he's went away through, and I phoned my brother back. I says, "Wee James has come to see you." So the conversation kind of went like, he was like, is this it, Pamela? I says, what are you saying that for, James? And I says, if Lindsay says you've frightened the bairn, you're going to have to go to hospital, bro. He says, is this it? I says, no, don't be so stupid. You know, you're just got a wee drip or something like that. You're dehydrated. You've been lying in your bed. You've not been eating. You've not been drinking. You know, you'll be all right. So my son went and got him. He went and helped him he got a shower and that, and my son helped him get dressed. Couldn't even put his own socks or shoes on. My son helped him with that. And took him to the hospital.
Just to ask you questions, because people make questions. Your brother wasn't a drug user or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Alcoholic?
No.
Was he good build, not obese, overweight or anything like that?
He had a bit of meat about him.
Nothing.
He was 19 stone, but he wasn't morbidly obese or that.
Was he tall as well?
He was bigger than me.
I'm 6'1", and I came in I was 17 stone at one point, but I'm down to about 15 and a half now,
So he had a bit of meat about him, but he wasn't morbidly obese or anything like that. But, I couldn't understand that, Anyway, my son goes, try to phone the NHS 24 and that, couldn't get through. It was the same day Hamza Yousaf phoned in the army to deal with the ambulances. I don't know if you can remember that.
I remember it.
So that was the day. So I remember putting screenshots.
And do you want to know the best part about it was, I had my own issues in 2020 and all that, going in and out of hospital in 2021. See these army people that came in,
Right.
it was pointless, because the ambulance people were telling me at the time, they're like, it's pointless, because they're not allowed to drive the ambulance, and they're not allowed to they said there was no point in them actually being there.
Well, I didn't see it, but what I do know is that there was 5 ambulances that was sat outside the hospital when my son arrived. And my son arrived and he asked them, he went into the hospital and asked for help, and he got told no. I'm dealing with a boy, a young boy with a broken foot or a broken ankle. And
your brother was in the car?
My brother was in the car, my son went into the hospital. So he then approached the paramedics and the ambulances. Will you come and help me? Not one of them would come and help. So he's on the phone to me at this point, and I says, well, phone 999. Right now, if you're outside the hospital, phone 999. So the call handler had... So my son actually kind of put the foot down and was, he's got ADHD and that. He's a big laddie, and he's like, somebody better get out here and help my uncle. I'm not taking him away. He's out in his car. He's like, just take me home, son. He's like, no. So my son, he phoned 999. And he's like, look, I'm here with my uncle. And he hadn't took any lateral flow tests or anything like that. And my wee daughter wasn't tested. I spat on a test. I didn't stick nothing up my nose.
Yeah. You get the same result.
I didn't stick nothing up my nose. I didn't stick nothing down the back of my throat, because I was seeing things about these tests.
Yeah.
So I'm just being honest with you.
No.
And so I spat on the test and it came up, it was positive. So nobody else needed to test. As far as I was concerned, we all had COVID.
You done the right thing there, because to be honest with you, you get the same result for spitting on it.
Right.
That's what everybody says, they want the saliva at the back. The thing, you just get the saliva and all you do is spit on the bloody thing.
Yeah. So that's what I done. So my brother obviously never had any tests. So my son says, look, my uncle's in the car with COVID, but that hadn't been confirmed. You know what I mean? He hadn't took a test.
So there was no test to say that he had COVID in his system?
Yeah. He'd just been...
But you all assumed because...
He'd been in our house the week before or whatever, that's what we were no well with. But he was presenting at that hospital with dehydration and diarrhoea.
So that was his only 2 symptoms. It wasn't like your standard, can he breathe?
Well, the lips were kind of going a bit blue.
Pneumonia?
I don't know what it was. It was the lips were going a bit blue. That's what my son says. His lips were going blue. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. But so he phoned the 999. The call handler was absolutely fantastic. Told them not to move. Told them they would phone into the hospital and they would make sure somebody came out to help. So in between that, my son's on the phone to me, keep me up to date, and the doctor came out and he leaned down to the car looked up at my brother, took his pulse, and then says that, yeah, they were admitting him, they were going to take him in. But it was an assessment period. They say it's a 4-hour assessment period. And they said to my son if he could hang around. They said, so they went and got a wheelchair and that. And my son, I think they wheeled him over into the, you know, the main entrance or whatever. And then they took over. There was this tent thing that, like, it was like a bed tent kind of thing. So they took over for there.
So hold on a minute, right? Your brother, your son's driven your brother to the hospital, ran in, begged them for help,
Told to get out.
told to get out.
Dealing with a child with a broken ankle or a broken foot.
So somebody with a broken foot, but your brother's lying there, dehydrated, boil ups, and then you've had to phone 999 outside the hospital.
While 5 ambulances are sitting there, yes.
And were these ambulances busy? Did they have people in the back? You don't know. Or?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So what? And then once you got the 999, then they took him in.
Only once they phoned and they helped to get him taken in. Aye.
That's shocking.
That's what happened.
Did your brother have a partner or anything like that?
Ex-partner.
Ex-partner. Right, okay. So obviously you've got him into the hospital. He's presenting with these symptoms: boil up, dehydration, diarrhea. Anything else?
Not to my knowledge. Not there wasn't a cough or anything like that. I was the one who was speaking to him every day on the phone. Other than the clearing the throat noise that he was making, there was nothing else. So what had happened is I'd let his ex-partner know that he was in the hospital. And within a couple of hours, I had to phone my son and say to my son that he had to come back because his ex-partner had phoned the hospital and she phoned me back hysterical. She says to me, Pamela, you have to get the family and that. They said he's going to die. We're talking this is about 10:30 the same night he went to hospital. He wasn't in the hospital until about back of 7. So within a couple of hours of my brother being at this hospital, we've been told my brother's going to die. So,
no underlying health issues?
No.
Right.
No. So I've immediately phoned the hospital. I've phoned my son. He's on the phone at the hospital because I've got my brother's records. So you can see your doctors are documenting at what time they're talking to who. So there's myself.
The doctor's notes.
There's myself. There's my son. There's his ex-partner. And then there's our little brother who lives in Glasgow, all on the phone at once, you know, and each doctor is talking to each of us. So 4 members of staff giving 4 messages to family members. It was the same message that, you know, James may die. Like, how can he be going? How can he be going to die? You know what? And I can remember the screaming that'll haunt me. I was just.
Who was screaming?
Me. I was screaming. And my brother had his phone on him, so my wee brother immediately got brought right through for Glasgow. My cousin, she brought him through with my wee niece. And
did they give him anything in the hospital at that point?
Not to my knowledge, no. It was the following day.
Okay.
They gave him nasal cannula, oxygen, I think. But the following day, I mean, we'd messaged my brother, sent him a picture, and he sent us a photo back with his thumbs up. He had a CPAP put on. And we're like, we're all here, bro. Are you all right? And he was like, aye. You know, sent us this picture back with thumbs up. But he had this hood. It was like a clear hood. And we sent him a picture back, and you know, I was trying to phone down to England and that to my dad and say, look, this is what's happening. And there was absolutely no way that they could come up. What were they going to do? You know, just all sit there and none of us could do nothing. So my brother asked me if I could come and get his keys and that for his house. And he says, but it's a bit of a mess. I was like, don't worry about that. So he was more concerned about, you know, he'd diarrhea and stuff in the pan and stuff needed cleaned. And I was like, don't be worried about that, brother, man. Don't be silly. But if that's what's worrying you, I'm going right to your house. on the Saturday. It was the first thing I done. Went to the hospital, dropped off toiletries. They sent out his keys and stuff like that. And I went right to his house, and I thought, right, there you go. Message right back to him, brother, that's your house clean. You don't be. That's the last thing you need to be worrying about. You just get better. So I'd had a friend contact me and tell me about their experience being in hospital with COVID, and that they had been put on oxygen. They'd been given oxygen, 100% oxygen for 3 weeks. So he was telling me, the man was telling me, it was a family friend. He says to me, he's got to eat and stuff like that, and, try and, keep his energy levels up and stuff like that. So I was saying to my brother, look, you've got to eat, you've got to drink.
See, the person you were talking to, did they present the same symptoms as your brother?
I can't really, I don't know any of that. I just know that they contacted me the minute they found out he was in the hospital, and they says, look, he's got to be eating, he's got to be drinking and that. I was like, he's on 100% oxygen, and they were like, that's all right. I was on 100% for 3 weeks. So I was like, right, okay. So I was saying to my brother, listen, 100%, you know what, just keep at it, keep eating. You've no ate, take your time to rest. You've no ate, you've no drank, you're getting all this fluids into you. You've got to just give yourself a wee chance here. Everything's going to be magic. You're going to be okay. I think I kind of refused to accept that, how could they just be telling me within a couple of years my brother was going to die? I was talking to him, he was messaging me. How was he going to die?
It doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
So the question is, the first thing they usually do is give you a test. Did nobody give him a test at this point to say it was in his system?
So they obviously did once he'd got in the hospital, and he'd tested positive for COVID.
Okay.
But they were immediately talking about ventilation.
Why ventilation? Was he struggling to breathe?
Well, he must have been, aye.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been why he had the blue lips.
Right.
So when I got his records and looked at his records, his oxygen stats were at 39%. 39.
His oxygen stats was 39%.
Aye.
Did they say to phone an ambulance if it drops below 92?
39%. On admission.
When he entered the...
A&E, when they were refusing to come and help him. 39% on admission.
Right. Did your brother try and phone the ambulance when he was starting to get bad in the house? Did they think he was that bad? No.
Well, that's what the notes say too. The notes turn around and say that I don't think he's aware of how unwell he actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So they mention that in his records. But I'm his sister. I didn't know how unwell he was.
Mm-hmm.
If he was that unwell, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
I had it. My little brother, our little brother had it. We're full blood. You know what I mean? Why? Why was it doing something different to my brother than it did to me and his other brother?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't understand it. So he was admitted into hospital, and he was on this CPAP.
Was a CPAP?
It's a hood. It's
Okay.
a hood.
Okay.
It's a hood, and it's continuous airflow. It's like pressure thing. So obviously he couldn't talk on a phone or anything like that, but he was able to text. But as I say, they were very short one-liners. Over the course of the weekend, the messages, it was a Monday, the messages were like, just stopping. And I'd phoned by, I think it was about 8 o'clock or something on the Monday night. I phoned the hospital and I said to them, if you gave my brother anything to make him sleepy, because they told me that if he gets tired, then they were going to ventilate him. And I says, you're not ventilating him, I don't want him ventilated. And they turned his oxygen down to 75%. And because after I'd had this conversation...
When you say 75%, you mean 75% medical oxygen grade?
Yeah, they gave him, so he was requiring 100% oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So they turned that down to 75%. on the Monday, and then
What was the reason for that?
well, what is the reason? That's what I says. What, put him back up to 100. If my friend's been in there, a family friend, partner's been in there, and he was on 100% for 3 weeks, give my brother 100% for 3 weeks. Why are you turning his oxygen down and making him fight harder? Leave him with 100% for 3 weeks. And then I says, because then they were saying they would have to ventilate him if he was getting tired and couldn't cope with the hood. And then I says, have you gave my brother any drugs to make my brother sleepy? Are you turning his oxygen down and giving him drugs to make him sleepy? And you want to ventilate him? And there was a bit of an argument between me and the nurse that night. And my brother sent me a picture of his monitor. And he says to me, go and get this checked out, Pamela. Go and get this checked out. So I sent it to my friend. She used to work in a cancer ward up in Perth. And I says to her, look, can you make any sense of this?
And what we're looking at here?
We're looking at the monitor. Now, I know the reason
What
why.
monitor? The heart rate monitor, the oxygen level monitor?
Aye. I know why he sent me that. Now, at the time I didn't. But by reading through his notes, it's because of the conversations they were having with my brother. They were telling him that he needed to go on a ventilator or he was going to die.
And he wasn't compass mentis, really, was he? If you're telling me that when you were talking to him, but if you're telling me when you were messaging, he felt like he wasn't really there, but was he kind of compass mentis at that point to make a decision? Does that make sense?
I think, well, bearing in mind when he's went into hospital, his oxygen sats were at 39%. So then we're talking that was on the Friday night. By the Monday, he was probably a bit more compass mentis than he was. But then, no, in between that, I would say maybe about the Sunday. By the Sunday, he was telling me he was good in that. By the Monday, that's when he started to become tired and sleepy. That's when they were reducing the oxygen. That's when he wanted to get this machine checked out. And then he started to become tired. Then I find out through his records and stuff that they gave him lorazepam. What's lorazepam?
So they did give him...
Aye, they gave him lorazepam. They didn't ask me that. They didn't ask me anything.
So just want to clear paint the picture. Your brother went in, he started feeling a bit stronger with the oxygen. And then they've decided to give him something.
Yes.
And not tell you about it.
Yes.
So what's lorazepam?
Well, it's a drug that it's like one of
sedative?
these kind of, yeah, like a benzo. You know, it's one of these ones that they tell you not to get empty with breathing difficulties.
Oh, really?
Yes. So the thing is, with my brother's on admission as well, what's important here is that if somebody presents in a hospital with oxygen sats at 39%, they should be deemed incapacitated at that moment in time. My brother was not deemed incapacitated at that moment in time.
What do you mean by that, deemed incapacitated? Like,
well, incapacity act should have been invoked, and the next of kin should have been, do you know what I mean, and involved in his care.
Okay.
He should have been, because he wasn't. If you go into the protocols and all the stuff that they tell you on the websites and stuff like that about somebody presenting with like dementia or pneumonia or whatever, you know what I mean. If you've got oxygen stats like that, you shouldn't be able to make decisions for yourself, because you're not thinking right. You're not in the right.
You're not fitting off, right?
So that should have happened first of all. It didn't happen. Then as I say, on the Sunday he was telling me I was eating custard and he's had a pudding and he's then we get to the Monday and his oxygen's going down to 75%, and then he's getting sleepy and that, and I'm asking if you gave my brother any drugs and that. I'm going to phone my brother. And what I meant, I knew I couldn't phone him because I knew he was on a hood, but I was wanting to try and ring his phone to wake him up, to get him to communicate with me. And the nurse got very angry with me. So there was a bit of an argument that took place.
Why did the nurse get angry with you?
Because she says that I was going to be forcing my brother to take the hood off, and by trying to phone him. But I wasn't. Obviously he couldn't take the hood off. I was just wanting to communicate with him. Why was he not communicating with me? What had happened on the Monday that made him stop communicating with me?
Were you not allowed to visit?
No.
And this is in 2021?
September 21, aye.
Why are you not allowed to visit him?
Well, I'm not allowed. I just had COVID myself. Not allowed. I asked to sign anything. Can I sign anything? I've just had COVID. No, absolutely
but
not.
You were clear of COVID at the time?
Aye, absolutely not. I wasn't allowed in. The next of kin, I wasn't allowed in. I was even asking them, my brother was even asking them, look, can you test me? Am I still positive? Because I was going by my husband, when do you test, spitting on the thing, and when are you coming up clear negative? Because my brother should be the same as you. So if you get them to test you again, James, because if you're negative, then we can get you moved into another ward and we can come and see you. So he asked that.
Was it ICU?
He first of all went into HDU, then ICU.
Okay.
So he asked that because it's in his notes. I asked that too. Sister Pamela's been on the phone asking these kind of questions. James has asked these kind of questions as well. Too unwell to be able to leave that ward, even if he was negative. Anyway, so that was it. That was the start of it. So then I found a ventilator survivor group on Facebook.
And they put him on the ventilator at this point?
So no, the Monday, let me go back to it, I'm sorry. And what happens, sorry, I'm just jumping the gun there.
No, don't worry, I'm probably my fault.
The Monday he'd asked me, sent me the picture of his monitor to get it checked. I asked my pal to check it out. She got it checked to me and she says to me, well, obviously it's not ideal, she says, but given the fact that, you know, he's went in and he's been really unwell and that, it's no fantastic, but it's no, you know, like he's going to die. He's not going to die or anything like that, doesn't he? You know, he's in a hospital, kind of just thought, you know, he's in the best place. But I, stupidly, and this has to live with me for the rest of my life, I stupidly told the nurses on that phone that he sent me a picture of his monitor. I told them that.
Why do you feel guilty for that? Why do you feel stupid for telling them that?
Because that's the night they ventilated him.
So do you feel...
He was giving information out.
So you felt that they put him on the ventilator because they were giving it...
Because he was giving it information.
What makes you think that?
Because that's what happened.
Mm.
That's what happened. My brother got vented in the middle of the night that night.
Nobody phoned you to say...
No.
Do you think it might have been different if you didn't send that message?
I don't know, but it's going to be in the back of my mind for the rest of my life.
But he didn't. Did he present symptoms to say he needed ventilated at this point? Do you think?
I never seen him. I was only communicating.
But going with your friend said, did your friend say that he needs a ventilator?
No. So when I looked at his records, I think he's when he got ventilated, he was at like 89% or something like that. When they ventilated him, my brother had an issue with his stomach. He had like ulcers in his stomach in 2019, and he'd went to the hospital, and his oxygen was worse in 2019 than what it was when they ventilated him.
Right.
So why did they need to ventilate him?
Just trying to get my head around this. So he kind of got stronger. But you would think he would ventilate him when he was really bad at the beginning.
He refused. Didn't want a ventilator.
So how did they come to the conclusion we need to give him a ventilator?
So what they said was, this is the interesting part here, I know. They says to me, they phones me up. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning. And they says to me that my brother James had been put in a ventilator. And I says, okay. I says, did my brother have any messages for like his sons or anything like that? And they says, James, no, they told me James was struggling and James asked to go on a ventilator. And I says, okay.
He asked for a ventilator.
Yeah. So I says, did he give any messages for his sons or anything like that? You know, like tell my wins I love them, or, you know, just something like you would naturally do. Tell my family I love them, tell my kids I love them, whatever. Just the most basic of things, do you know what I mean? And the doctor says to me, no, he couldn't talk. And straight away I went, how could he ask to go on a ventilator then if he couldn't talk?
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't even know what got said after that. I can't even remember. That was just when it just that for the minute in the garden when they said they were going to die, he was going to die, and then for that phone call. Then
how long did it take from hospital, transferred, getting a wee bit better to ventilator? How long was this?
For the Friday, and he was ventilated in the middle of the night on the Monday night.
Over 3 days. But he started to present a wee bit. He was getting better, am I right?
Well, he was eating custards and eating puddings and that. It was in his notes. On the Sunday. On the Monday.
Do you think if he's gone on a ventilated bed at the very beginning?
Well, the other thing is, I'll tell you another thing, I'll be very honest with you here as well. I thought they couldn't do anything to you if you'd been eating. I thought they weren't able to, put you to sleep if you were eating. So I was telling my brother to eat, and then they can't ventilate you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm eating, Pamela. Pudding, I've had a custard, I've had a wee pudding. And the nurse says to me that he'd been eating. But then he got ventilated that Monday. He ended up sleepy. And that argument took place. The Monday he'd sent me the picture of his monitor. And then that argument took place with the nurse. And then I says, if you gave my brother drugs, you have turned his oxygen down, you have gave him drugs, if you have done something to my brother. And I says, he sent me his monitor, he sent me a picture of it. And in the middle of that night, he was ventilated. So that's when we got to the bit where they said that he has to go on it. And then I said, well, any messages for his children? And they says to me, no. I says, well, how? He couldn't speak. I says, so how could he ask to go on a ventilator if he couldn't speak? So then I joined a Facebook survival group, ventilator survivor group on Facebook, and this was worldwide. This was people that were on ventilators, their family members. They were telling you about peak flows, tidal volumes, all the medications, the paralysis, the sedations, the propofol, the midazolam, they were telling you about it all.
Morphine.
The impacts that the one of the drugs would have on your heart and stuff like that, and how it would, so that I was taking information for them every single day, and I was going back to that hospital and I was asking them every single day. I phoned in the morning first thing, they would phone me in the afternoon. I would do 6 days it took before I got a video call with them, 6 days, but by then they'd been ventilated. So then they would phone me in the afternoon, I would phone and try and do my video call round about tea time, and then I used to phone every night, maybe about 11 o'clock at night, between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, just to double check on him and make sure he was still all right. And they told me as well that when he went in, that he was a candidate for ECMO.
What's that?
Well, something where they oxygenate the blood outside the body. But they told me there was only a place that they could do it was Aberdeen, and that it was at full capacity. So therefore, the other place that they would be dealing with ECMO would be Leicester for my brother. So I thought, right, okay, you've got to try everything, right? At this point, he's on a ventilator. We're absolutely terrified. Okay, that's another chance. But then they say to me, it's only available for the first 7 days. I'm like, right, okay. Then they say to me, they change it again to 7 days for admission, no 7 days for ventilation. So I'm like, right, okay. So I'm keeping a wee diary, a notebook, writing this down. I'm also updating my family, my dad and that down in Leicester. When they say about the ECMO in Leicester, I think this is brilliant. My dad and that lives in Leicester. It'd be easier for my dad and that to get to him in Leicester than it would be for me to get to Aberdeen. So I'm thinking this is fantastic. But then, like I said, they says to me it was only available for 7 days. And then the ECMO 7 days was up. And my brother wasn't a candidate for ECMO. So they told me. Until I got his records. And then I find out that ECMO were in discussion with them right until the 2nd October. And he died on the 5th. When they told me he was only available for the first 7 days for going in on the 17th of September. Now, what the hospital have recently done to me is I asked them to, elaborate on the whole ECMO situation, and they told me that the reason my brother didn't go to Aberdeen was due to a clinical decision and not a capacity. But then they forgot that I've already got the communication between Leicester and Nine Wells, and it clearly states in it, in black and white, that my brother couldn't go to Aberdeen because of capacity issues. Hence the reason why he was going to be transferred to Leicester for ECMO. And they've just come back and blatantly lied to me on the 5th of November in black and white.
November, did you say?
5th of November. They've just told me that it was a clinical decision and not a capacity. They clearly forgot that they've already sent me all the information in the communication team. It was never discussed with Leicester at all. I've got it in black and white.
So, this is a head melt, this, by the way. I'm trying to keep up with my brain fog and all that. This is...
I've not even scratched the surface yet.
See, in regards to the staff and all that, and the doctors, because you said you had an argument, what was their attitude? Like, how did they treat you?
Absolutely horrific. They were, and it was kind of the same kind of attitude that my son got on the night that he went to the hospital with him. You know, you will not do this and you will not do that.
Kind of military.
I says, and you know, who do you think you are? You're not telling me what I will do and what I won't do. That's my brother in there. So I absolutely right away tried to phone my brother. She's not telling me what I could do. I didn't know where my brother was in that hospital. You know, if I knew where he was, I'd have been at the hospital, but I didn't know whereabouts he was. Massive. No idea.
So they lied to you that your brother was entitled to go to Leicester, but they made something else up?
Aye. They told me it was only available for the first 7 days as well. I've got the communication with Leicester. It was available for a lot longer than 7 days. They were phoning up and asking his progress and stuff like that. Well, it was like email things going back and forth, kind of like a WhatsApp kind of chat thing. That wasn't the only thing that they lied to me about either.
Was your brother still stable, or was he just...
No, he was out. He was unconscious. He was on a ventilator. He was heavy sedated, paralysed. They didn't really ask me any kind of permission for the, you know, some of the invasive things that they done to him while he was in there. They just kind of done it. They were telling me that I shouldn't be. It was okay to look at these things and on the ventilator survivor group, but I shouldn't be taking any information, that everybody's different and I should be clarifying things with them if I had any questions. I says, right, that's okay, I'll ask you questions if I see the things I'm going to ask them. So they were, inflammation markers are right down, and he's stable, and we're not out the woods yet, we're not where we need to be, and James is very unwell. They made sure they made that clear to me on every single call, that James is very, very unwell. James is very unwell, and okay, but at some points, his oxygen was down to like 50%, requiring 50% in that. And then it was the weekend, so it would have been roughly around about the 3rd October. The doctor had carried out this procedure, a bowel or a bronchoscopy or whatever it's called, some procedure, I don't even know what it is. But she was doing that to my brother, and she'd phoned up and told me after she'd done it, and she told me there was quite a lot of gunk and stuff that secretions and that, you had to start to learn the words for their or the terminology and that.
Well,
that
was it mucus?
Yeah, mucus, and the prone position and supine and that, not just back and forward. I was using like, you flipping my brother and that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I'd done a podcast with a guy, and I actually phoned him before this because I wanted to just make sure I was asking the right questions.
Right.
And I asked him, he tells us in the podcast what he's seen in 2020 in regards to people with COVID and all that, and he says, I've seen a hell of a lot of neglect, John. He says, I don't personally think COVID killed a lot of people. I think it was the protocols put in place, and this is kind of summing this up for me. And I asked him today, because I know your brother had the ventilator. Now, he said that whatever this thing was, it was mucus, it was like glue. He says, because I seen it, he said, I physically seen this mucus. And I'm like, well, in layman's terms, if you think about it, if you've got this kind of mucus in your system, let's pretend that you're clogged like it's like a sink.
Yeah.
And the ventilators are forcing.
Yeah. You're requiring a plumber almost daily to
it's common sense.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're putting that into the lungs, the lungs can't. And he says a hell of a lot of people went on the ventilators, did not come out, John. They didn't come out. And he said it can make scarring and make a hell of a lot of different problems.
Well, so this
is kind of
my brother ended up with ventilator associated pneumonia.
Okay.
So they didn't tell us that either. this is another thing, is they signed him up to a trial, a randomised trial. And
Who signed that off?
Dr. Pauline Austin.
Did you,
She
not a
was-
family member, sign off?
No. Dr. Pauline Austin was the study investigator at Nine Wells Hospital, Dundee, Scotland. She was the study investigator for the randomised trial. And
But what gave her the permission to do that?
she reckons that my brother gave consent. But what I can tell you and what I have evidence of is signatures that do not match. And they're not my brother's signature. So now our family are going to pay for a specialist to have a look at these signatures, along with James's other handwriting, to rule out any foul play. I've been to the police just a fortnight ago and presented this to the police, and the police told me that I should take it up an inquiry. I explained to the police that that's not the inquiry's remit. They're not there to investigate any kind of criminality, forging documents or anything like that. I then spoke with Stuart Gale prior to giving evidence at the inquiry, and I said to Stuart Gale, look, I've just been to the police, and this is what the police have said to me. He says, they're wrong for telling you that. I says, no, I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of that, Stuart, but I'm just highlighting you, the inquiry, about what's still going on today. The police have just instructed me on Sunday to present this evidence to yourself. But you're telling me that that's not to happen. I know that's not to happen, but the police won't touch this. But anyway, I'll just jump back a wee bit, because what happened also with this randomised trial, the trial that he got put on meant that it was remap cap, meant that he was to get no antibiotics. So not only that, he was also administered with a drug called toximolobab. So they may present a wee bit different, like tohimolobab or whatever, but toximolobab is what I'm going to call it. Now what that does is it suppresses your immune system. And if you're in a vulnerable position as it is, why would you give toximolobab to somebody who's vulnerable? It's going to make you even more vulnerable, and especially with somebody like my brother who's allergic to penicillin. So if you're going to catch any of these kind of infections that toximolobab kind of may open you up to, TB, stenomatosis, MRSA, all these funguses.
Who did they use that on, this medication usually?
Oh, they're still using it. They're still using it now.
But who did they use it on, like cancer patients or anything like that before?
No, I think it's. I don't even know what it is. It's got a black box warning anyway.
Oh, really?
They say it's some kind of like arthritis thing or something like that. I don't know. But all I know is that it's an immune suppressant, and it's got to be treated with care. And especially if you can't have the strongest antibiotics, which would give you any kind of chance to fight any of these infections that you're going to be susceptible to if you take this. Like I say, my brother didn't go to doctors, didn't take medications, was allergic to penicillin, took an antihistamine like me. So my brother was given that. That was one of the questions asked the doctors as well, just recently. Who gave him it and why? Were you aware that he was allergic to penicillins and stuff like that? Because again, in his notes, that same weekend that the bronchoscopy was carried out, the weekend before he died, the penicillin allergy was removed from his records.
Did they remove
So all the way through his notes, he's got allergies, penicillin.
Yeah.
You get to that weekend when that procedure was carried out, and we have now got no known allergies. NKA, and then it says no allergies.
But previous was
all the way through until that weekend. Then we have, with the results of that bronchoscopy, previous comments deleted, and then the word collapse.
What do you mean previous comments deleted?
Well, that's what it says. It's typed, previous comments have been deleted. So they would usually it would be like a computer, typed up kind of thing. It says previous comments deleted. How do you do that? I don't know how they do it.
But if you've got records, they need to know everything.
Well, they've been deleted. So these are the kind of questions I've got. What does that mean? What does collapse mean? When you're findings, you've done this procedure, it's got collapse here. What does collapse mean? What was these previous comments that have been deleted? They also prescribed things like penicillins and by error, and then scored it out, and handwritten notes didn't tie in with the typed kind of notes, like the lab kind of reports that were coming. So there was a lot of inconsistency between the two lots of notes. And, it's got all rewritten on the fourth. Penicillin prescribed in error, switched to this one, switched to that one, cotrimoxazole or something like that, and then switched to doxy. So this written notes is then saying that he's on this, but you're going to the lab notes, and the lab notes are saying that he's on absolutely nothing.
How many drugs did they pump your brother for?
I haven't got a clue. There's a lot anyway. He was on, the midazolam, the propofol.
There's definitely the midazolam and morphine in the system.
Yeah, alfentanil. But they say they need that's standard care if you're on a ventilator and sedated. He was on 3 different kind of sedations as well. There's question marks, 3 sedations, question marks in his records. So somebody else must have questioned it in there.
I'm going to go back to the podcast I done with the funeral cell, the paramedic. Midazolam and morphine was an end of life care. I believe it's called the Liverpool pathway.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
I always stay in my lane,
because
obviously what's happened to me with the vaccine, and I can only stick to it what's put me in this position. And I've heard a lot of things regarding the midazolam and that. And then when the paramedic was telling me that, nobody was surviving with that midazolam and morphine in them as far as I'm aware.
Well, that's what they say standard care is when you're on a ventilator. I'm not a doctor, but they say that's standard to be given that.
It's no standard if it's called end of life care. It's standard if you're dying.
Yes, well, we got told that we would get in if James was going to die. We would be allowed in to see him. But he wasn't at that stage. But he was on all the same protocols for it.
It's a very, very complicated.
Very, 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 very complicated. So that's not even the start. That's not even the start yet. So it gets worse, John. It gets really worse. So after that procedure's carried out over that weekend, we do a video call. I do a video call. My dad's partner does a video call first, and she says to me, James was looking a bit. She either said red or swollen. So then I says, right, okay, I'll double check. Do my video call. Done my video call. I was like, James looks a wee bit red and swollen.
Red and swollen where in the face?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like his neck and stuff like that. It was just, didn't it? There was a change. Now, I've been doing video calls with him every single night, and my 17-year-old son was doing them with me. So there was, although he was on a ventilator, and it wasn't going to be very nice to look at, there was nothing that, I seen past all that. That was my brother. I needed to make the calls. My son was very brave and would come on and try and talk about football scores and play some music and that. But there was a change. And I says, like, my brother's looking red and he's looking swollen. And she says to me, it was just the lighting in the room. This was on the Saturday. And I went, all right.
Oh, like a filter.
Well, I was like, well, I kind of thought it was that then made me question: has he been moved at all? Has he been in different rooms, or what's going on? Has he been in the same part of the hospital all the time while he's been there? What's happening? So that was that. Then the following day, the Sunday, I'd got a phone call from Dr. Chapman, 9 Wells Hospital. And she'd phoned me about 9 o'clock at night. She didn't document this. In fact, she didn't document this at all in his records, that this phone call took place. I was a bit concerned that James was looking red and swollen. Her nurse had told her that. So that prompted her to make a call with me. And she told me that she was going to... so I was like, can you put him on...
Going to what?
Start him on antibiotics.
Right. Because
sometimes when you get... tubes and stuff, you can get bugs, she called it, and she says to me, I'd say to her, like, is it like any kind of like fluid retention? And it's got, I can't even pronounce the word, a diuretic or something like that as a medication they give you. So she says she was going to start him on that. So this was the Sunday night, Sunday maybe about 6 o'clock or something like that. And My son was due to go to school, so he, like I say, he was doing the video calls with me. He would play music in the background, and I would speak to my brother. But it got right to 5 to 12 at night. Every time I phoned, they told me they were busy, phone back. And so I was leaving it like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and I was like, I'll have to phone back again to do my video call. And eventually I says to my son, look, just go to your bed, son. You've got school tomorrow. And it was 5 to 12 at night, and eventually they gave me my video call. And when I seen my brother, he was lying, face down, prone position, his face to the side. But his face was swollen right up like a big red balloon, like he was going to pop. And I was like, man, look at the state of that. I was like, what's that? And I can't even remember what they says to me. I was just awfully concerned about the state he was in. Very, very red and very, very swollen. And it was the next day, was a Monday. There was a blackout with social media, with like WhatsApp, Facebook and stuff like that. So that was the 4th of October. So I couldn't get a video call with him. So the last time I'd seen him was the Sunday night, and he was red and swollen. I got a phone call on the Monday afternoon at 12 o'clock, and it wasn't for any of the Dr. Chapman. She was the one that would regularly phone me all the time. She was the main person that would phone me all the time. She was the one that lied to me every time she spoke to me. So Dr. Chapman, if you're listening, you lied to me. You lied to our family on a daily basis. They were able to tell me that my brother was going to die or could have died, but they couldn't tell me that my brother had caught all their dirty manky infections in their hospital, and they had that. They'd done nothing but lie to me. And what happened after that was the Tuesday morning. Something wasn't right. I just felt it. I think I'd woke up in the middle of the night. You're going to think I'm crazy here. I'd woke up and I get allergies to Chinese food or that, or something in them that makes me, my hands get itchy and red. And I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning. My hands were all itchy and all red. And I had to go and take antihistamines. And I bounced out my bed 8 o'clock in the morning. I phoned the hospital and I says, right, I want to see like x-rays. I've not seen empty face to face. I'm coming to the hospital. I was like, no, can you send me them? And an email, and they says to me, no, we can't do that for data protection. So like, right, okay, well, I'm going to come to the hospital then. So they never said that I couldn't go, but I didn't get a chance to go because 10:47 that morning they phoned me. Dr. Ben Shippey, he phoned me, and he says to me, Pamela, are you alone, Pamela? Are you alone, Pamela? And I says to him, just fucking tell me. I says, just fucking tell me. I'm really sorry, Pamela. James had a cardiac arrest. And James is gone. And I just put the phone down to him. So then I had to phone my dad. And I had to tell him that James was gone. And that's the first time I've ever heard my dad cry. Then I had to phone his ex-partner and tell them. And then I had to tell everybody else. And that was it. And I had to just... The Dr. Shippey phoned me back that afternoon. And he says to me, I says to him, right, this is my autism. I says, tell me what happens. I want to know what happened. Now bearing in mind, my brother's the prone position, face down. Do you know what I mean? If he's had a cardiac arrest, I'm not a doctor, you watch Holby City or you even see them right now when they're dropping down in the streets and the defibrillators are everywhere. What are they doing? They're shocking. So I'm waiting on the bit. It's like, tell me what happened. And James flatlined or whatever, and I'm like, right, okay, get to the bit where you get, you went and got the pads and you done the chingies and you worked on them for 40 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. That he didn't get to that bit. because that bit didn't happen. I was like, what do you mean you didn't use the pads on my brother? He says to me, no. But I didn't understand at the time, and I still don't understand that if he was flatlined. But how do you know if somebody in the street's flatlined? Would you still know restart their heart? You don't know that if they're just collapsed in the street. But anyway, they decided not to use their pads on my brother, and they says they gave him some compressions. But I got that phone call at 10:47. I got my brother's records. My brother's records say that the doctors were beeped at 10:29 to say that it's desaturated, to call it. Wasn't the first time he'd done it umpteen times, then they didn't tell me about it. So he's desaturated, they got a beep, so the doctors are in other parts of the hospital, working their way through COVID ICU, and they're in all different parts of the hospital. But I can't go in and see my brother. So the doctor goes, and the doctor's writing in his book at 10:45. He's writing, going by his watch, 10:45, phoned Pamela a few minutes ago, asked her if she was alone. A few minutes ago would mean it was before 10:45. They phoned me at 10:47 for a 41-second call, but he's writing in his book at 10:45 that he's phoned me a few minutes ago. Somebody else is then asked to check the time of death, corroborate the time of death, and they're saying that doctor called arrest at 10:48. So I'm like, right, wait a minute. Dr. Shippy, who phoned me, is writing in his book at 10:45. He phoned me a few minutes ago. This doctor only got beeped at 10:29. One other doctor's saying they called arrest at 10:48. His death certificate says 10:45. Did they even try on my brother? Did they even try?
So hold on, let me get this right.
I'm trying to get that right too, John.
They contacted you to say that your brother had passed away
On a 41-second call.
on a 41-second call, but then the time of death was after that phone call. So your brother technically... Am I getting this right here?
They phoned me at 10:47, right? His death certificate says 10:45, but they've changed that to 10:48.
Why did they change it to 10:48?
Because
do you think they've done defib after?
No, but I don't know when. I don't know what time my brother died at.
A lot of red flags with this.
So anyway, it gets worse than that. It's just starting. So then I've already just explained to you that the doctor phones me back and he gets to the bit that there was no defibs used, and I said, what do you mean there's no been, you never done that?
That's standard, by the way.
So straight away I've went, that's a concern. So this is after, he's phoned me back in the afternoon, back at 1 o'clock, 5th October. So he then says to me, if I want to come and see James, I can come and see James, but he had to warn me that James was a bit of a mess. What one is in a bit of a mess. I'm like, right, okay, this is strange. So I'm allowed to go and see my brother now, but I couldn't go and see him before. So, tea time, I had to wait on my son's girlfriend with my wee grandson and that coming to get me. And we had to go for my house in Perth. We had to go way through to St Andrews, pick up my brother's ex-partner, and then we had to make our way back to Dundee. So it was tea time by the time I got there. They made us wait for ages in the foyer. They gave us masks. We took masks. There was masks that you could take on your way in. I feel like big hanky boxes. So we put a mask on. And I don't know, for the minute I went in there, something didn't sit right with me. Because I says to my son, and I says to my son's, my brother's ex-partner, they took ages to come and get us. And then they took us down the stairs and says to us that we would need to get new masks. And I went, I've just took this mask upstairs. You might be going to think I'm crazy here, but I was thinking to myself, these cunts are trying to poison me. Don't take the mask. We've just took the mask up the stairs. We've only been sitting up the stairs and came down the stairs. I was like, don't take the mask. It's like, no, we've got these masks. Why would we change our mask?
Why do you need it? Why do you need to change a mask when you've got a brand new one on?
I don't know. I don't know, why did we need to change a mask? But we didn't change a mask anyway. Said absolutely no chance, we're not changing a mask. Something didn't sit right with me with that. So she went away again and she came back with ginger nurse. She took us through to see James. James was lying on this table, metal table. But James was magnolia. James's eyes were like tennis balls. Were like a slit in them. He had like no neck, you couldn't see his ears. His lips were like big bananas. Like he'd had filler, he was just... And I was thinking to myself, man, looks like he's took some kind of anaphylactic shot. Didn't even look like him. Wasn't he like my brother lying there? I don't know, I was numb. I didn't cry. Something just come right over me and it was just like nothing.
What?
Nothing.
That's just mental. I
just wish I took a photo of him in there. But I didn't do it.
What colour was his lips?
I can't even remember. He was. Do you know how if you press on your skin?
Aye,
you do
get
that's
the white come away.
Yeah, but they made us wait for ages. Something happened there as well. Because when I went to the funeral, I refused to take my brother out of the hospital after that. I was like, I went away with his belongings and stuff, and his sister, my sister-in-law, his ex-partner, she went with one bag, I had another bag, and his photographs were missing. She thought I had them, I thought she had them. So I phoned the hospital and I says, look, can I get his photographs? Can you put me through to the ICU, COVID ICU? And they're like, well, can I? I said, what do you mean, can I? And they went, because the ward's shut down. I said, what do you mean the ward's shut down? My brother was only there a few days ago. They said, we're no patients. I said, you've not got any COVID patients? She says, no. I says, where's his pictures? So anyway, it turned out that the consultant had put them in with his body and put them into the morgue with him. The bit they go in the hospital.
Right.
And eventually a receptionist will phone me back and says to me, they're soiled. I said,
The what, sorry?
Soiled.
No.
Just keep them. Anyway, so at this point in time, I've been a bit... There was a conversation with it Dr. Shippey before I left the hospital that night. And it was very much I can't remember very much about it. He just listened to me, but he listened to my concerns, and he says to me that he was going to report that to the PF, because I wanted a post-mortem done on my brother.
PF, which PF, sorry?
Prosecutor Fiscal.
Okay.
So he was going to report the death to the PF. So I was like, right, fantastic, do that. I says, because someone just wasn't sitting right with me. And the state that he was in, I was thinking maybe he took an anaphylactic shock, they've just started him on antibiotics. I was thinking things like that. What's happened, they didn't use the defib on him and stuff like that. And so they said they were going to report the death to the PF, but it was up to the PF what they'd done. It was out of his hands. I said, no bother. So on the 7th of October, I got a message from him, an email death certificate where I was to contact, or I was to go to Dundee Register Office, or I was to contact them whatever and register my brother's death. But my brother wasn't fae Dundee, and I wasn't fae Dundee, and I didn't drive. Why would I be going to Dundee? So I was like, the PF is no want to take any more action and not interested in an investigation. She's happy for him to release the body and that's it. So you can come and collect your brother. I was like, no chance, it's not working like that. I'm not coming to get my brother. How can the PF? The PF's not even spoke to me. So by this time, the Saturday, I'd started phoning the police and stuff like that. I'm reporting a death. My brother's died in that hospital. Something's happened to him. They never used a defib on him. Do you know?
You're reporting as a crime now.
Aye.
See, just in regards to it, when did you start to think there's something not right here? See, just out of curiosity, right?
The minute they put him on a ventilator.
Do you think that they could have saved your brother?
Absolutely.
Do you know how they could have saved your brother, just out of curiosity?
by no giving him the drugs that they're giving him. I believe the hospital protocols killed my brother. My brother had umpteen infections, and each one of them. How can they say my brother died of SARS-CoV-2? How can they say that when he had all these other infections? There's investigations going on right now in Glasgow and Queen Elizabeth for the stenomatosis, wee Millie Main and that. How can that be a criminal investigation in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, but not in Nine Wells Hospital? My brother had the same infection. How can that be?
So he had that infection?
He had the MRSA. No, the hospital wrote to me and told me that he had a small ulcer on his lip. My brother had inside his chest, it was through the tubes, the samples were for his tubes. It was also all over his face, it ate his face. He came out that hospital. By the time I seen him in the funeral directors, he looked like he'd done 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. He was unrecognisable. His dad, our dad, had to look at him like that. His sons had to look at him, one of his sons had to look at him like that. My sons, his brothers, his sisters, that was the last image that stays with us. And that wasn't what I seen in the funeral directors, wasn't what I seen in the hospital. Obviously the swelling and all that. Well,
Camden.
Yeah, and he looked like he'd had a stroke. His face was mangled. It was an absolute mess. Eating with MRSA. How can they say to me that you go on and each one of these things can kill you? My brother had them all, but there's only SARS-CoV-2. Now, SARS-CoV-2, I believe, is you get like HIV to the AIDS. So the HIV is the virus and the AIDS is the disease.
Yeah.
So the SARS-CoV-2 is the virus and the COVID-19 is the disease. So my brother's death certificate is the lesser part of the virus. Do you understand what I mean? So it would progress into COVID-19.
What? Right, so let's just try and do a timeline here, because it's very, very complicated story. It's very, very, I've got the brain fog, so don't just hang in my ignorance, do you know what I mean, in case I forgot anything. On the death certificate, what was your brother's death doing to?
SARS-CoV-2.
That's what they put on the death certificate. Right. But it was a cardiac arrest, but they didn't even defib him, even though if a standard pedestrian or a kid is in the fucking playing in a park, which all these defibs have now miraculously appeared, by the way. They're everywhere. But everybody seems to think it's normal for a child to have a cardiac arrest now, but it's clearly not. If someone has a cardiac arrest, the standard thing is you get the defib and you start working on them. Now, I know a guy who owns a gym, had a young guy in, went into a cardiac arrest, and they worked on him for 50 minutes and the boy came back to life. I think it was 45 minutes they worked on him and the boy managed to come back to life. And you're telling me that your brother had a cardiac arrest, they didn't even fucking defib him, they didn't do anything, they've just
within a 15-minute period, he was signed off, gone.
And then they put down that it was
a SARS-CoV-2.
Even though
single organ failure, which was his lungs.
So one of the things as well, because a lot of people might just think that you've got a major gripe because you lost your brother. Do you get what I'm saying here? You're going to get, this is what you're going to get. People are going to say, she just sounds like you lost your brother and just looking to blame someone.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yep.
It doesn't, there's so many red flags with this story. It's it's very complicated as well. So
SARS-CoV-2 doesn't make my brother look unrecognisable. Nobody else, his loved ones, is unrecognisable. The funeral director tells me straight, if these forms still exist, these cremation forms that were done away with a couple of years ago, if they still existed, that then they would tick the box on that to say they had a cause for concern, what was on that death certificate. It was a MCCD or something like that, medical cause of death certificate, whatever. And you get that, and then you take it to the registrar office. So I phone the police, I phone the prosecutor fiscal. The doctor, this is where it gets again. The doctor, Shippy, reports the death to the PF at 11 a.m. on the morning that my brother died, which is 10 minutes after the first phone call, because of concerns that Sister Pamela has. Right. I hung a phone up on him. I didn't know.
You didn't have a conversation with him anymore?
I didn't know the defib wasn't used until the second conversation, which was back at 1 o'clock. So he'd already reported the death by 11 o'clock that morning. So what you've got here is, if you report a death to the PF, I don't know if you've heard of Health Improvement Scotland.
HIS, I know it very well.
Yeah, so you can contact them as an interested person if you're next of kin gathering the death, and then they can investigate that. Not always, but they can, and you request that they do that. But they cannot do that if a death has been reported to the prosecutor fiscal. So remember I tell you I was in the hospital and I go in and I see my brother lying there, and then I go out and have the conversation with the doctor, and he tells me that he's going to report the death to the PF and all that, and they may wish to do a post-mortem. That was all we ever wanted. He'd already reported it at 11 o'clock that morning and cut off any interested person application going
Have
in.
you ever looked into... I've not lost many family members in my life, right? But have you never looked at like a standard death? Do you get what I'm saying? Like someone died, let's go back to 2019. Someone dies and there's ABC protocol.
Yeah.
This seems to go A to Z to Y. Do you get what I'm saying?
And you know what? It doesn't stop there. Yeah, so I accessed his medical records and I had to sit.
When did you get the medical records?
In November.
How long's it after the death?
A month or so.
Yeah, okay.
I accessed them straight away. The day he died, I put in an application for them. Following day. And I obviously I refused to take him at the hospital, start phoning the police, phone the Crown Office, stuff like that. I want to pay for a private post-mortem, contact Health Improvement Scotland and all that. They just come back and told me that my complaint's upheld. I should have been given the correct information from them and from the Crown Office that where our family should have been directed to pay for a private post-mortem. That information got withheld for our family and we never got a chance to have one. That private post-mortem would at least give us some closure, do you know what I mean? We would have known the cause of James's death. I accessed his medical records. I'm not a doctor, so I had to sit there and I had to read and Google. And what I found for the records was a completely different story for what I'd been keeping a record of every single day. There was one incident where a couple of days into it, after being ventilated, they found out that he'd tested positive for MRSA. So they were saying couldn't possibly be his chase bloods, let's get another test done and stuff. And so
what's MRSA, just out of curiosity?
Staphylococcal, something like that. So it's a staph infection.
Is that a disease and injection?
Yeah,
right,
so
okay.
it can affect your lungs, it can, eat away at your face and your whatever in your body. Whatever.
How long was that they discovered that?
So he was ventilated on the 21st, they found that on the 23rd.
Okay.
And they were referring to that we can't find it anywhere else, where's this came from? And then they were saying, right, test him again. Chase bloods and stuff like that. So they tested him again.
It was COVID in the system as well?
So the COVID pneumonitis was what was written on his notes. So then they chased his bloods after testing him again, and they found out that he had MRSA. So then I finds out that he's then got ventilator-associated pneumonia. He's got MRSA. He's got stenomatosis metafolia. He's got Candida. The day before he was dying, they were testing him for TB, tuberculosis. You know what I mean? We were being told nothing, none of this. I mean, why could they not tell us about infections? They'd also started on a level antibiotics. It was called Levo. And they'd started him on that once they found out about the MRSA. But they only gave him 5 days course of that. The randomised trial that he was on was a non-antibiotic trial. So once they found out that he had the MRSA, they started them on this level, because obviously they were very restricted in what they could give him because of his penicillin allergy. You get a sensitive and a resistant to certain kind of, the infections are resistant to or sensitive to certain medications.
Yeah. But they also said that, because remember, going back to when he was first in hospital, remember his oxygen came up and then his oxygen dropped, but you asked him, did you give him anything? That Larot, what was it?
Lorazepam.
And they gave him that?
They didn't tell me that. I only found that out through his notes.
So they did give him that?
They gave him that, yeah. They gave him that day.
And that's what probably dropped his...
That I don't
That's
know.
what probably
made him sleepy anyway. That's what made him sleepy. So, yeah, I found a lot of stuff through his notes. And so that prompted me to raise more questions with the NHS and put complaints in. And they were being very evasive when they were coming back to me. You know, they were totally... Like, they wouldn't mention the word stenomatrosis. They wouldn't mention... They were referring to the MRSA being a small ulcer on his lip. Now, I took photographs of my brother in his coffin. I pulled hair from his head because they refused to allow us to get a post-mortem. So that's a length I had to go to in the hope that one day I would be able to maybe try and get some...
They don't let you get a post-mortem?
No, they refused us.
Why?
I don't know, they won't answer that. Seemingly the Crown Office. So there was one lady in particular named Laura Knox. She works for the Crown Office. I was dealing with her directly. And I asked Laura, I says, everything you're saying to me, you're telling me you've contacted a pathologist. When you got a report in saying that these are Pamela's concerns, should it not have been your protocol? When you report a death to the PF, it also states that you shouldn't touch any of their medical equipment, other lines or anything like that until an investigation's carried out. If you've got a concern saying that they're my concerns, Sister Pamela's concerns, should you not have contacted me? I could have been saying my brother had 2 black eyes or 2 years were missing. You've not contacted me to ask that these are actually my concerns. And I asked them on umpteen occasions as well, when was the report made? Because they told me it was made at 11 o'clock. I said, but I didn't have any concerns at 11 o'clock. I didn't know that a defibrillator wasn't used on my brother at 11 o'clock. So how could that have been? So then I've put 2 and 2 together and thought, he's cut off my avenue for Health Improvement Scotland getting involved as an interested person by reporting that death. The minute it was reported to them, they could no longer help me in any way, shape or form.
Couldn't investigate that.
Couldn't do nothing. That was cut off. So then I started to think, this has been done deliberately. This has all been calculated. This has been thought through and they know exactly, and they've cut the avenues off. So that's what happened. So I've says to this Laura.
Has this been confirmed, by the way? That
Yeah. I've got an apology. 5th of November, I got an apology for the Health Improvement Scotland, saying that...
Apology doesn't really cut it, does it?
Well, a bit late, innit? You know what I mean? What am I meant to do with an apology? Thanks very much, but you know, we're still living without the closure. Now, this is what else is annoying me, John. Laura Knox reckons that she had a couple of discussions with a couple of different pathologists, and the inflammation to my brother is consistent with COVID, right? So I put in for a freedom of information and a subject access and asked to see the pathologist, because what I'm asking is, they made this decision on the 18th of October that they weren't going to investigate my brother's death, and that was the end of. Right, did you know, because I didn't know on the 18th of October, did you know, Laura, when you made this decision, it's nothing personal towards her, right? She's the one that's making it personal, right? This is an issue with the NHS and my brother and the care that he received, forged signatures, medication that was administered without his consent, all that kind of stuff. I'm asking her, did you know, were you aware of A, B, C and D? Did you know about all these infections? Did you know that my brother was weighing 29 stone in his coffin? That's what him in his coffin weighed. I got the funeral director to
29 stone?
He was 19. The funeral director deducted the weight of the coffin for me. I asked him to do that. There wasn't a length I didn't go to. I says, what did he weigh? What does his coffin weigh?
23 or something.
So it was 4 stone overweight and fluid that he still had 15 days after he died. When his funeral was on the 21st October, my family had to sign forms and that to carry his coffin. Everybody had to sign. So all I want to know is that if she's had discussions, Laura Knox, if you're listening, if you've had discussions because you feel not one of yous will answer our family, not one of yous have 1 ounce of respect for our family, we are asking you, if you have information about our brother, will you answer us? Will you tell us, did you know about all the infections? Did you know about the massive, no inflammation, the fluid retention, no attempt to put any drains in or drain any fluid from him? What caused that? Did you have the discussions with a pathologist? If so, you don't need to share it with us. Just at least answer us. Just answer the questions and tell us, because they won't even do that. They won't do it. Why have they got information about my brother on somebody's shelf or in somebody's drawer, and they can't tell our family so that, to give us some sort of closure. Why are they prolonging the trauma? Why?
I'm very, very sorry to hear this. It's heartbreaking to hear.
John, do you know what? I've went to them back and forward, and all people are saying to me is, what's that, medical negligence, go down the medical negligence route. My brother's life was not for sale. There's not one brown penny that you couldn't put a price in his life. Blood, dirty money. I'm not going down a criminal or medical negligence.
Yeah.
I just want the truth. Our family want closure. We don't want to chase money, sue MD. That's not
Well,
what we're
he's got
interested
kids
in.
to look after, and I mean, you get kids as well.
He's got kids, yeah, that's right enough. But that's we just want the truth.
Yeah.
When our mum was killed, our mum died. We were very young, and we got £5,000 each put in a trust fund. When we were 18 years old, we got £8,500. There you go, that's your mum.
Yeah.
You know,
You can't
I
put a
know,
price
I
on
know
a
the
life.
feeling of that kind of dirty money. My brother's life wasn't for sale. We just want the truth.
Well, that's exactly the same with me and my position I'm in. I want them to I want you all to turn around and say, we fucked up with this vaccine. This is it. This is like, you cannot sit and say that this thing has saved millions of lives because there's no evidence of it.
Truth.
Just tell the fucking truth in regards to COVID as well, because hearing this story, now the fact is, Pamela, a lot of people will sit here and maybe listen to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them will just be, no, I mean, you sound like myself, you just won't sit down and accept that it was COVID, and the fact that, because I'm probably going to guess that what's happened to your brother might have happened to a hell of a lot more
Absolutely.
people. And the fact is, because I said to you earlier on, you're probably going to get people, she just sounds like she just can't accept that she lost a brother.
Good for them.
But
I know for
because
a
the
fact.
fact is, right, the thing is, like I said, I'm going to say to you is, because I come up against idiots all the time.
Right.
You know, how do you know this? What put you in this position? Like everybody thinks.
How do they know?
Exactly, right? So the question is,
how can they tell me it was only COVID that killed my brother? How can they tell me that when he had all these infections?
So I guess the question is, right, because your brother caught COVID,
Yeah.
what people are going to say, well, what else could they have done? Do you get what I'm saying? That's what the people are probably going to say. They're probably going to say, what else could they have done to save him?
Well, what they could have done is been honest and transparent with the family.
Yeah.
That's number one.
What it sounds like.
They could have maybe done their research before administering him with toximolobab. They could have looked at, there's no one size fits all. If this man is allergic to penicillins, if we give him this, you've got to weigh up the risks and benefits. Like I say, my brother lived between Scotland and England. His records were all over the place because I had to go and source them myself. So, when they were making these decisions, should they know have at least had these decisions with us as a family and let us make the decisions and say, right, okay, even if they did give my brother penicillin, see if they'd have said to me, look, Pamela, your brother is on his way out. We need to throw everything we've got at him to try and save his life. I'd have said, go for it. Go for it.
Just try and
do whatever you've got to do to save my brother's life, right? But it's the lies.
Yeah.
It's the lies. It's we don't even know what time he died. Why did they not even try and use a defibrillator? Why? And then the report in it. It's
just regards to
the
signature as well, just because I know you spot, and again, I apologise for people me butting in because it's a brain fog and that, but the signature side of things, you said that there was a something signed but didn't look like his signature. Now people might say, well, he was ill. Do you get what I'm saying? They'll say, well, but like,
well, then he wouldn't have had capacity to sign them, would he have?
Yeah, he shouldn't have signed it.
No, he wouldn't have signed it. He was against it. I've got messages on my phone from my brother that say no medicine. So,
I mean, we'll need to finish this up very soon, but I mean, I appreciate you coming on, and I know how hard this must be.
Well, thank you for having me on.
No, I just want, like you, my honest opinion is the mainstream media are fucking dead.
Yeah.
And these are stories that should be heard, and a lot of questions need to be accepted. And my honest opinion is I think a lot of people need to do exactly what you've done and actually start to question, was it COVID? Wasn't was it a protocol that was put in
Hospital
place?
protocols.
Was it a hospital was it COVID protocols? Because
Yeah.
what I'm seeing in this Scottish inquiry, actually I seen another woman as well, pretty much saying the same thing, and it's saying it's not looking to me that it was COVID. It looks like it was the protocols that were putting in
One
place.
size fits all protocols, and that's how people died. That's what I believe.
And the other thing as well is that ivermectin and the hydrochloroquine, I think it's called.
Yeah, I've heard about them.
They could have prevented whatever the hell this thing is as well. Because I tell you what, I've got ivermectin over there, and I'll show you. I take it every day now because of what it's done, what this thing's done to me. But obviously, how we got together was obviously in the inquiry.
Yeah, so the inquiry, that was like, I had to, I was getting doors shut on me, the Crown Office, the NHS, you know, nobody would listen to me. And eventually the door opened for the inquiry because I was obviously a Scottish bereaved. So I took part in that inquiry, and I've been very fortunate now that that's opened up this door with me and you, so I'm grateful for that, thank you.
But in regards to the inquiry, because I'm in the inquiry as well, we're in the UK inquiry and the COVID inquiry, and how we get into that was by pure chance. Do you know how many lawyers I contacted? About 30 lawyers to represent us, and nobody would want to touch us. By pure chance, I managed to get, a woman that runs the group, Ruth,
Right.
we managed to get a lawyer within 2 days, by the way. So we didn't know what we were getting. The UK inquiry, hundreds of confidence in my lawyers that are representing us for that, because that's Terry who done the Hillsborough disaster.
Right.
A lot of confidence in that man. He told me it's personal, but in regards to you in the inquiry, obviously what I seen on the witness stand, just out of curiosity, were you restricted in what you could and could not say?
Yeah, absolutely, aye.
Why?
I don't know. There's just a restriction order in place.
What things were you restricted in saying?
I wasn't allowed to name any of the doctors or any professionals or anything like that. I wasn't allowed to name any family members. And there was, I think you'll notice that there was a part of my evidence that was scrubbed from the inquiry on the YouTube, and it was because I named my wee brother. So they scrubbed it when they referred to me and James losing our mum. It says me, James and Stuart.
Who restricted you? The inquiry or the lawyer?
The inquiry.
Who's your lawyer representing you?
Amber Amler.
Thoughts on him?
Alright. Got to give him the benefit of the doubt, eh?
I mean, my personal opinion is he's sticking to a narrative of, I think the vaccine injured don't really stick with his narrative, if I'm being honest with you. I'm praying that I'm wrong with it.
Well,
but
the thing is, John, I think you're going to find that there's going to be a lot more vaccine injured than there is going to be COVID, so
I'm now of the
have to be
impression,
interested.
I'm in more impression now that the vaccine is more dangerous than the virus itself.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And I was going to ask you what's your thoughts on the vaccine.
Absolutely. When my son's just lost one of his friends, I'll not name any names because that's not my place to do that, but 19-year-old 2 weeks ago dropped in dead. Cardiac issues.
How old?
19.
Fit? Healthy?
Absolutely.
Underlying health conditions?
None.
Anyone know his vaccination status?
Yeah.
And?
Yeah.
Vaccinated?
Yeah. The majority of them are because they all wanted to go on holiday to see their pals, about to get into clubs.
And do you know how much I wish this wasn't true?
Oh, do you know what? It doesn't even bear thinking about.
If a lot more people put it like this, our group are not allowed to be advertised. I've contacted papers. I put it on Facebook. It's restricted my account. TikTok's the same. I need to actually scrub out the name vaccine and injured and on it. In Scotland up to date, I believe there's 40,000 adverse reactions from this thing and 600 deaths that have been reported. In my opinion, it's very underreported, because how's it going to get reported when the doctors are never putting pen to paper? But I tell you all right now, it's all changing, and trust me, the person that changed it's sitting right here, right now, and I can make that promise to every person in the world. I'll change your narrative, and I don't give a fuck. But if people knew about my group, I've only got about 400 in my group right now. That'll be 40,000 I could have in my fucking group. why am I picking up the NHS and government's fucking mess? And do you know what, Pamela? Take my hats off to you completely, because you never gave up for your brother, and I hope you never will.
I never will, absolutely not. Thank you for having me and giving me this chance today. He'll be up there watching me saying, tell the world, sister, tell the world. So I'm here today, bro. What have I got to lose? They've taken him away from me now.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to just finish on before we
Thank you so much.
I feel like there's probably bits we have missed, but
It's all right.
I want to make sure I got because it was very, very, it was such a complicated story. It really is.
It's crazy, you know, people, but it's true. It's how can we make
It's
sense of
not.
that?
It's not.
How you meant to have closure to that?
This is the thing. Like,
it's not normal.
I'm so glad that we've got people like you that are going to question doctors and question, right, how did we go from A to Z? Do you know what I mean? This just didn't go A, B, C, D.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother went in with whatever this thing was. They clearly started showing signs that he was getting better. Get transferred, is that correct? But they gave him something that was making him sleepy.
Lorazepam. Reduced his oxygen.
And reduced his oxygen
Why
again.
not give him 100% for 3 weeks like they gave other people? I can't get my head around that. And then part of me thinks, was it because he was unvaxxed? Because it's got that written right across his things. Do you know what I mean? But then I'm thinking, you know, it's only the vaccinated that are dying. Sorry, do you know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking. So did he sneaky take it?
I'm scared for the future, if I'm being honest, because every time I turn on my Facebook, as a celebrity died.
Oh, I on my local funeral, do you know, you get the things on your Facebook. Every second day it's somebody, you know, suddenly died. I never seen this with COVID. I only know my brother that died with COVID. Who else?
That's what I'm saying. And then you've got that Boris Johnson on the inquiry today saying about the rollout of the vaccine. And June Rain, MHRA, how the fuck did you pass this thing when they fucking even knew in their own data itself, they said that 1 in 81 people from the Pfizer one were going to experience an adverse reaction. It's in the Pfizer's data, the myocarditis and pericarditis was in there as well.
Unbelievable.
The deaths, sudden deaths, they are fucking massive. And like I say, if you haven't seen it, and I tell everybody, you haven't seen it, watch the funeral celebrant. Because
I've seen it, I watched it.
Because I tell you, everybody's agreeing with her, but nobody's taking a fucking stand.
We've got John O'Looney in England who's been speaking out for quite a while.
Yeah,
I've been following him for a while. So there is people out there that are trying to speak out, but they're not getting a chance to.
But I say, in regards to the inquiry, you speaking to people in the inquiry, and are they under the same impression as you, or are they all just accepting it's COVID?
Well, I think majority of them are accepting it's COVID, but there is other people that are kind of questioning it. For instance, I met a woman today while I was there, and she was very wary herself. No, why would she be?
Mm-hmm.
Why would she know of you unless she was thinking along the kind of lines?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She knew enough about you to just have more than just, oh, that's who that is. Unless you think along the kind of lines, you wouldn't know people like yourself, or you wouldn't know to the extent what she knew about you.
But the most silent, me and Alex are the most silent guys on the internet. I don't care what anybody
just keep
says.
shouting, keep making a noise.
I bring the fucking noise.
Bring it on.
But look, Pamela, I really, really appreciate you. I'm so, my heart goes out to your brother. Dedicate this episode to your brother.
Yeah, James Cameron for you.
Aye, and just keep
41.
Just keep doing what you're doing, sweetheart.
Will do. Thank you very much.
No bother.